Very good afternoon, everyone. Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Boardroom, where, as always, we are live and we would love to take your questions and your comments live. So if you do have any for our interviews today, please do put them in the comments section below. As I said, we're streaming live, but this will also be available back on who'swho.mt, Malta's leading business portal. Now, a topic that has come up this year for many is internationalization, as we sort of realized and understood perhaps some of the limitations of the local market, but also understood what is available to us internationally. And locally, one of the entities that really does help businesses to go international is Trade Malta, which has a range of services that are tailored to the needs of companies that are planning to take their first step into the international business sphere. I'm very pleased to welcome my guests today. They are all from Trade Malta. We have the CEO of Trade Malta, Anton Buttigieg. We have the chairman, Sultana, and the chief officer, Joe Schembri. Gentlemen, thank you all for being with me today on The Boardroom. Great to see you.
Thanks for having us here.
It's a pleasure. So, Stephen, I'm going to come to you first to give me a bit of insight. First of all, the obvious question that our viewers might have: what is internationalization?
It's a good question because internationalization can mean many, many things. So it's a very broad term. Traditionally, one thought of internationalization as being purely exports. But today, internationalization means, for example, setting up production facilities abroad for your company, setting up logistical facilities abroad, setting up sales offices, distribution networks abroad. So it's a much broader term. So today, internationalization comprises anything from direct exports of goods and services from Malta to actually physically producing your product abroad or marketing your product from a foreign country. So it's a very broad term today. And Trade Malta tries to assist companies who are at the various stages of internationalization.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Anton, I'll come to you now. I mean, why is internationalization something that Maltese businesses should consider?
Well, Joe, I think there are a number of factors. To begin with, we meet a lot of specialized companies which have the capabilities of selling their products or services to an international market. And I think that it gives us a lot of pride when we go and meet these companies, and it shows that they can have an international standing. Internationalization is also obvious in the sense that it's a small market. So there is potential to grow the business. And research has been very clear that companies who actually internationalize their operations are usually more profitable and have usually a stronger internal processes, and they usually last around longer than the companies that don't.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Anton. And Joe, I'll come to you. Is internationalization something that any business can aspire to, or is it something that's only open to specific businesses?
I would say, again, it depends. Trade Malta is here, of course, to assist any company interested in internationalization. It's, however, not for everyone, in the sense that you have, of course, a lot of companies that are designed, whose business model is designed to be local, because their scope is local. However, a lot of companies in Malta are international in scope, both because of the ambition they have or because of the opportunities they would have met somewhere along the way, or because simply, they would, essentially plan to be international. It's not a matter of what sector the company is coming from, what size of the company. It's really more about, how innovative the product is and whether the company is willing to kind of go, for a long haul, if you like, trip to internationalization. We meet companies from all sectors. We've had, and my colleagues and I can speak to you about various stories that we, know from Malta, from software companies to engineering companies to manufacturing companies. So there's a whole range. What is perhaps common to all of them is the fact that they have an innovative product or service, and that they are essentially perseverant enough to, treat this as a long-term plan. But beyond that, it can be any company from any sector, I would say.
Okay, that's so interesting. And Stephen, I'll come to you now. I mean, We have examples in Malta of companies that have gone international. Could you share any examples, perhaps, that might be of interest to our viewers?
I mean, the range of companies which use Trade Malta services range from traditional goods and services like manufactured food products to information technology to medical and pharmaceutical products, for example. So the range is broad. So there's a range of companies. What's interesting is when you look at the profile of the companies who use the services of Trade Malta, you see companies at different stages of internationalization. So it ranges from novice exporters or even would-be exporters, companies who have never exported but would like to explore the possibilities, to companies who are very experienced and well-engineered exporters, some of whom have production, distribution, and logistical facilities abroad. So the range is quite broad. And this is also one of the unique attributes of Trade Malta, because we bring together different companies with different levels of international experience. And this interchange between the companies when they meet on business delegations or trade missions is very important, because the exchange of information and knowledge between companies is as valuable as the services that Trade Malta offers.
I see. And Stephen, you spoke there a little bit about sort of export of products. Is internationalization possible even for services industries?
Of course, yeah, by all means. Although typically it's easier to quantify the export of products because basically you have access to very detailed trade statistics, broken down, etc. In the case of services, it's a bit more difficult because of the intangible nature of most services. However, if you were to look at the profile of companies who actually use our services, I would say that 40-50% are actually in the services sector. So yes, there is an increasing number of companies in the services sector that actually utilize Trade Malta services. I'm sure Anton and Joe can give more specific company information, but there's actually a growing number.
Yes, if I may.
Okay, Anton, yes, I'll come to you. It would be lovely to have a bit more detail.
We've seen an increase, let's say, in the ICT sector, companies doing different kind of services who from day one were born global. They weren't even willing to serve the local market because the products that they found a niche, an opportunity. And we're seeing more and more of these companies coming along. There are also companies doing consultancy in specific scientific fields or research and development, who also, they've built experiences locally, and they now are taking those experiences on the international market. So yes, I would say we have a balance today, whereas let's say 20 years ago we had more manufacturers exporting than service companies. I think today we have a balance with about 50% of manufacturers and also service providers who are exporting their goods or services.
I see. Anton, that's so interesting, and I'd love to stay with you, perhaps just to understand a bit of maybe the challenges that local businesses might face, or perhaps perceive that they will face if they're going to think about going international.
Well, absolutely, there are challenges when internationalizing the business. I think one of the most important one is which market do I go to, and who do I talk to? The networking aspect is crucial, because if you're not talking to the right people on the ground, then it means that you're going to spend the next 6, 7, 8, 10 months and realize that you're not talking to the right partner and you would have to start from scratch. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen or that it never happened to the best companies, but the networking aspect is very crucial who we're talking to. We are lucky that we are part of the European Union, and it's relatively easy to find potential partners, buyers, distributors, people who are willing to work with you. It's a bit different when going into new or non-traditional markets, because it's more difficult maybe to identify the right partner or to do the necessary due diligence. So that is I think, big challenge. Another big challenge is that sometimes companies think that they can run the local operations and the foreign operations at the same speed with the same people. we usually find out that, if a product is successful or a service is successful, at some point in time, you need to build a team that takes care of the internationalization aspect. Otherwise, either the local or the international market will suffer. So there's a challenge there because you need to bring more resources, more money on the table to engage more people. And if you're at your early stages of operations, that's not always possible. So, which also leads me to financing. Financing could be an issue, especially for startups or companies which are relatively young. And in a COVID-free world, it is a must that you must travel to the market, understand local culture, get to meet your potential partners or collaborators on a face-to-face basis. So yes, there are quite a few challenges, but that's why we're here as well, to help at least cushion the initial impact, or to open doors in markets where there are no contacts.
Absolutely. Anton, thank you. Very, very insightful there, and great to sort of see how Trade Malta is helping local businesses to overcome this sort of the challenges that they might be concerned about. And Joe, I'll come to you. Maybe you could explain a little bit more about exactly how Trade Malta does this. What sort of doors do you open? What services do you offer to companies perhaps that are thinking internationalization, could that be for me?
Yes, Trade Malta offers services that in reality are offered by trade promotion organizations in most countries, especially in Europe. If every country in Europe typically has an equivalent of Trade Malta. And what these organizations do, what Trade Malta is doing today, that used to happen through Malta Enterprise and Metco even before that, is essentially assist local companies in various ways. I would say part of that, or one pillar of that, is financing, co-financing. A lot of the initiatives they take, mostly, especially before COVID, travel to trade fairs, to exhibit in trade fairs, to take part in conferences, to participate in trade missions, and to do other things where we essentially co-finance. And therefore, like Anton was mentioning, because internationalization can be a bit not just long-term, but also costly, we essentially reduce that risk by co-financing. There is another very important aspect, which is networking. Like Anton mentioned, when we assist companies that are not necessarily interested in a European market, for example, where access to a supplier, access to a potential partner is easier, when we're taking companies or leading them to, Middle East, Africa, etc., there we try to essentially use an institutional network, which we've built to get companies, in touch with potential partners and potential suppliers, clients, etc. And we're constantly trying to build this. It's not easy, because even as an organization, we're a young organization, 5 years or so. So we're building a network, using the diplomatic network when necessary and where this applies, to try to create networking opportunities. Stephen mentioned before, for example, even the events we organized, people trade missions and other things, they are an opportunity for companies to network between them. But we try to take them out there and try to get them, in touch with potential players out there. And then the last stream, I would say, is information and knowledge. We have a good portal that essentially provides companies with information, including reports, statistics, etc., as well as the training opportunities we organize. We organize training seminars, training courses, including the webinars, which we've organized while, of course, we were a bit handicapped as to, what else to organize to do, to kind of for our traditional kind of remit. But those three pillars, I would say, networking, co-financing, and knowledge and information.
Okay. And Joe, I'll stay with you. I mean, as you've been talking about sort of webinars online, I mean, has this past year been a good year for internationalization, given that people couldn't travel and perhaps use their normal streams for going international? Or have you seen that it's been a little bit more difficult?
No, it has been difficult for all Trade Malta's clients. I think for every exporter or company involved in internationalization out of Malta. The truth is, the business development tools or approaches that companies typically use involve travel, a lot of our assistance, in terms of the assistance instruments we use, are also dependent on travel, and therefore without travel, suddenly we found ourselves, in a completely new paradigm. And in fact, we had to change, even the kind of services we offer. Maybe Anton or Stephen can elaborate a bit on this later on. We've changed and also we've seen a change during the pandemic. We had clients, when we spoke, I remember me and Anton speaking to our, I would say, top 15 exporters back in March. And then the approach was, listen, we're waiting. We have stopped business development because this is going to be something which passes. Whereas then we've taken a proper survey of maybe, I would say, the most important clients of Trade Malta in September this time, and the situation had changed. Companies were realizing that this is something which is long-term, and therefore they could not simply stop doing business development, but they were switching to other means, mostly digital marketing and those kind of activities. And we are helping them now doing that kind of stuff as well.
Okay.
Joe, if I can jump in, speaking not as chairman of Trade Malta, but as someone who works in the private sector and exports on a full-time basis, right? The past few months have been quite hard on many companies in Malta, not just in Malta, but also abroad. But obviously, we're interested in the Maltese companies. Different companies in different sectors have been affected differently. And at least what I found is that not just our company, but others are actually using this time to reassess their strategies, their export strategies in different markets. Think of new product development for when things normalize, and they will normalize pretty quickly within the next 18 months, for sure. What's also interesting is that we've noticed that not all export markets have been affected in the same way by COVID. So we've had instances in which we've been very badly hit in certain markets, sales dramatically down, whereas in other markets, we've more or less kept our own, and in some other markets, we've actually grown. And this, I think, harks back to a very important principle, is that given the size of our domestic markets, it's very important not only to internationalize, but also to have, in many instances, not to put your eggs in the same basket. In other words, to diversify your base of export markets. Don't depend on just one export market. Clearly, this does not apply to all companies, because you can't really generalize. But generally speaking, we found in Malta that those companies who have diversified their export base are in a better position to fight back, basically.
Yeah, if I may add to that, I think the major problem for exporters has been a fall in international demand. The minute that COVID struck, companies just didn't place orders, or shifted or stopped orders. So I think that affected, especially the manufacturing, export side, affected badly. The service industry also experienced a decline, but then I would say you have more resilient sectors than others. We've seen, let's say, ICT companies who had products which were available and in line with, let's say, for people to work from home. So they had Anton to sell. Those companies obviously, had a trump card up their sleeve, and they could go for it during these times. So it's been a mixed bag of fortune, yes. And to add to what Stephen was saying, or rather to elaborate, we are also at a stage where a lot of companies are specializing in a particular area. So it's not just a market. So if, let's say, if you're supplying the airline industry and the airline industry went down, you're in the wrong industry at that particular moment. Or if you're supplying the software for, let's say, the airport business or for retail shops, then the impact would have been greater, because you are a very specialized producer of that particular service or product. So no matter which market then you're serving, if that industry has been affected hard, then obviously the impact has been bigger on those companies.
Absolutely. Stephen, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you at Trade Malta actually adapted in the past few months to sort of serve your clients. Is that something you can tell me a little more about?
Sure. I mean, some of the core features of Trade Malta services include networking. Particularly taking companies as part of business delegations overseas, trade and business missions, also participation in international exhibitions. So that's one of the more, if you like, in-demand services for Trade Malta. Obviously, given the current situation with restrictions on travel, health restrictions which differ from a country-by-country basis, this obviously has impacted. So there has been a move towards the provision of, I would say, informational and advisory services which are being provided online. However, Trade Malta is still planning ahead in the sense that we are still encouraging companies to participate in exhibitions overseas. Obviously, if the exhibition has been cancelled or postponed, then it's postponed. But obviously, to think ahead and bear in mind that within the next 6 to 9 months, things should become more normal. Clearly, they will never normalize to the same extent which were in 2019. That will take a couple of years, I guess. But international travel will resume. International participation exhibitions will resume. Trade missions will also resume. We're also exploring the possibility of doing virtual trade missions using various digital platforms. And this is, I think, in a sense, a blessing in disguise, because I think prior to COVID, we had more or less these platforms available, but we didn't really use them. Now we have no choice but to use them. And I think having used them, we now understand how beneficial and cost-effective they could be. They can never substitute the face-to-face networking, which is essential for business, because business is based on trust. And there's a limit to how much trust you can build via a laptop or a PC. But the future will be different from the past. I think even when things normalize, we'll be making more intensive use of digital platforms for networking.
Yeah. If I may add to what Stephen was saying, we've realized that everyone went online, and also businesses went online. So we also adjusted our incentive scheme and implemented an online grant. So for people who want to internationalize using online platforms, such as Google Ads, such as Facebook, LinkedIn. So we're giving incentives, financial grants to people or companies who are doing internationalization online. And this is something we were really, wanted to push in the past, but we found some certain reluctance from companies who won't go online. But this gave us the opportunity now to listen. You need also to build a presence online. And I think this gave us that opportunity as well.
So that's really interesting, Anton. Practically speaking, what does that mean for businesses who might be interested to sort of digitize or perhaps advertise internationally? How can Trade Malta help them with that?
Sure. Let's say, I don't know, just let's mention one particular market. Let's say you want to do business or you want to sell a product or service in Saudi Arabia, and you are, planning a marketing campaign using traditional means. And all of a sudden now you can't do that because people are, stuck inside. So you can shift that expense online, and Trade Malta would partly fund the advertising cost on it could be a specialized platform, it could be a generic platform, it could be a Google ad. So at least you can target that market via digital means, and we'll help you. We'll refund part of that cost, which obviously you can use in many other ways. You can either spend whatever we give you back and invest more in the market, or you can invest that money into something else.
I see. How interesting. And Anton, I'll stay with you. I mean, you mentioned there Saudi Arabia, you are encouraging increased links with Africa. It's been a big focus for Trade Malta in recent months. Could you talk to us a little bit more about the opportunities that you might see for that market in the future for Maltese businesses?
Yes, absolutely. From day one that we started, the board had given us a very clear direction. We had to expand our horizons from an export perspective, and whilst Europe is our largest trading partner, and I feel that will remain the same, we needed to look into new or non-traditional markets for Maltese companies. So that is why a lot of people think, when they think about Trade Malta, they think of us about trying to find new commercial opportunities in new markets. It's not really the case, and I tell you why. Because when we support a lot of companies to exhibit in international fairs or do international development, I would say that the majority of them would go to the traditional markets, Europe, the United States, Southeast Asia. So most of our funds go to those companies who are trying to do business in established markets. However, we have been pushing, yes, on new markets. Sub-Saharan Africa has been one of them. It's not only us. I can assure you that when we speak to the other trade promotion organizations in Europe, Africa is very much high on their agenda. It's also very much high on the agenda of the European Commission. And since this new commission was set up, I think hardly a day passes when the European Commission doesn't mention doing business or partnering up with Africa. The reason is obvious. There's a huge market. There are 1.3 billion people just south of Malta. It's a whole continent, and we are encouraging partnerships between Maltese companies and African companies in this stage, where Maltese companies bring their expertise and work together with African companies to set up a business in Africa, to generate employment in Africa, and to grow their business in Africa. A lot of interesting things are happening in Africa. I think the major one is the free trade agreement of the African Union. And that means that most borders and taxes will be eliminated should all the countries be signatories to the agreement. So we see a lot of potential. We are focusing on a number of small markets, 3-4 markets, where we are building our capacity. And we feel that there are opportunities in those markets for sure, but they could also be very good hubs then to access other markets in the region to expand exporting opportunities.
Of course. Well, thank you there, Anton. That's very exciting. I'm sure there'll be some of our viewers thinking, okay, that's really interesting. I am excited. I would like to capitalize on those opportunities. And Joe, I'll come to you perhaps for your sort of insight. Let's back up a moment and just say, what does a business need to consider before they start thinking of internationalization?
I think, well, companies start thinking of internationalization at various stages. But if, I had to think of, the basic kind of ingredients, first of all, there's a product or a service. Whereas it is true that your product and service actually develops with, applying it to clients, getting feedback from the market improves your product and makes you change the product. The truth is you need to start from a product that is innovative enough to, really be a solution to some pain point, essentially. And we found, especially on the services side, that this has really been the case. Companies, even from a small country like Malta, with all the restrictions, have done well internationally when they had an innovative product. So I think that's a first. But beyond that, then it's really a matter of trying to understand the market. Understanding the market means both understanding the market through market research. And as Stephen mentioned, we're doing a lot of that right now with clients, because in lieu of their traveling, they're spending money and time in doing market research to understand markets, but also understanding markets and understanding and building a network through actual meeting people and trying to build a network, because the networking is not just an issue of creating opportunities directly, but networking is a really good source of information. So first, there's an innovation or a product that needs to be there. There's a market knowledge, which you get either from desk, from research, or from networking. And then I think it's a matter of persevering, really. We've had, various stories that we've heard from our clients. And I think if there's one underlying, or a few underlying principles, is those, that there's an innovation, that they know the market quite well, and obviously got to know the market as they went along, not immediately, and they persevered in a way that they, and to that, I guess one adds that they were flexible and, they were adapting to the changes and the feedback. Many times, especially in services, companies adapt, their product, their services based on client feedback. So companies that have the internal systems that essentially allow them to, learn from the market, learn from their clients, from suppliers, from the network, many times they grow faster, simply because they absorb knowledge more and they act upon it. So I would say those would be the ingredients in my eyes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe, if I can add, I think this is a very crucial point which Joe was mentioning. Sometimes we meet companies that come to us with a finished product. And then they go to the market and they realize that it's in the wrong packaging, it's in the wrong pricing. It will never, it's a good product, but under those circumstances, it will not sell. Which means that at that stage, they would have invested heavily in machinery, packaging, pricing, marketing. I urge companies not to do that mistake. Just because something sells locally in a current format, it doesn't mean necessarily that it will sell in the same format in another market. So you'll have to make, as Joe said, do the right homework, do the right market research, and we can provide with a lot of tools on that front, so that when you go to that market, at least you're ready from that respect.
If I can add something, I think the point mentioned by both Anton and Joe, I think is very important in the sense that it's difficult to do international marketing from behind the desk. Because from behind the desk, you can do valid and detailed and very useful desk research, which will help you prepare a good, solid export strategy. But ultimately, to really understand the market, you need to go several times to the market, talk to the various players in the market, see who your competitors are, see how they're acting, and respond accordingly. One of the responses could be adapting the product or service you are currently providing. You might have a product or service which is wildly successful in Malta or in another country, but unless it's adapted, changed, or modified, will not be successful in the next country. One important point is that it's very important not to homogenize markets, in the sense you might have markets, Anton mentioned the Middle East, for example, Saudi. The Saudi market for most products is not the same as the market next door in Kuwait or Bahrain or the UAE, for example. There are clear market differences, and you need to be aware of these and take these into account when preparing your product, your pricing, your promotion, and so on. So this is very important. You need to understand the markets, and Trade Malta, in this respect, can offer a range of services, from information to actually going to the market and learning by doing, if you like, seeing the actual market and seeing the players in the market, which is essential, I think.
Thank you, Stephen. Joe, do you have any further thoughts on this sort of intercultural intelligence that is required?
Absolutely. I think Stephen is absolutely right in stating that, what companies do many times, even and for example, Trade Malta assists companies to exhibit in a trade fair or to visit a trade fair. And what you realize there, an international trade exhibition, what companies realize many times is that either their product needs to be, changed or adopted to some market or the other. When you go to these international networking events, you learn a real lot about not just about the market you're functioning in, about who the main players are, and you get a lot of feedback on your product. And therefore, we encourage companies, even during this period where travel is restricted, to gain exposure by, for example, doing networking anyway, even at this time, and also doing online, one-to-one interactions. One of the services we're working on, Anton perhaps can elaborate on this, is a series of virtual trade missions that we have hopefully coming up sometime next year. They will be like our normal trade missions, but the people will be meeting other people from other companies and other countries through a virtual platform. And that's very important, as Stephen was saying, because in the end, that feedback teaches you a lot and at least confirms the desk research you would have done.
Okay, thank you very much. And in fact, then, Anton, I'll come to you perhaps to elaborate a little bit more on that and on those virtual trade missions perhaps that are planned, and also maybe to give our viewers a bit of insight into, if they are interested, how can they join Trade Malta? How does the relationship between them and Trade Malta work?
Sure. To clarify, there's no membership fee to join Trade Malta. It's very simple. You just log on to www.trademalta.org. There's a register or button. You just put in your credentials, choose your password, and you're pretty much set, and you can use most of our services. And I urge companies that are interested in exporting to register and have a good look at the resources that we have available on our portal. I think there's a lot of useful information. When it comes to the online events, the virtual events that Joe and Stephen were mentioning before, and the idea is to, and they are already established events. A lot of trade promotion organizations are organizing similar events like this. The scope is that we're trying to bring companies together digitally on a digital platform where they can share, their products or services, their profiles, what kind of partners, distributors, agents, whatever they're looking for, and hopefully at the other end, there's a match with a potential partner. We're obviously working with also similar agencies like ours, governments, chambers of commerce on the ground, who can also potentially advertise that there is that opportunity, and also to bring on board companies in that particular market to come and meet the Maltese companies online. But we will also be advertising this on the local media and on our website. And for those who register, we also issue a regular mail shot, which includes most of the events that will be coming up, or webinars, so on and so forth.
Okay. Thank you, Anton. I know that for some companies that have internationalized in the past, one sort of worry they might have about 2021 is Brexit. Of course, the UK traditionally was a market that Malta worked with very closely. Stephen, would you be in a position perhaps to give us some insight into how Brexit could impact issues for this market in the new year? Oh, Stephen, you are muted at the moment. We'll just stop you and ask you to unmute yourself, please. There you go.
No, I was saying I was dreading this question, simply because there are so many unknowns. Mm-hmm. Let's put it this way. I mean, the biggest difficulty we have at the moment, and I'm talking as someone who operates in the private sector and export, is that it's the uncertainty. If we knew what the outcome is going to be in terms of whether it's going to be a hard Brexit or not hard Brexit, then we can respond accordingly. As things are today, there's still many question marks, many questions. Logic would say that since the EU and the UK are so interdependent, they would come to some deal whereby basically trade flows continue as usual. Other issues in terms of residency, migration, etc., those are separate. But from a trade point of view, one would assume that logically, because of the degree of interdependence, things will go ahead smoothly. In other words, there will be no tariff barriers and no other non-tariff barriers, so to speak. If there is a hard Brexit and there are barriers, there are tariffs in place, for example, both in terms of our exports to the UK and imports from the UK to Malta, then there could be issues. Given the volume of trade between Malta and the UK, I would anticipate that probably we'd have more difficulties, more challenges on the importation side, because Malta imports quite a lot from the UK, and a good chunk of what is imported is not just consumer goods, but it's also industrial inputs and raw materials used by our companies to export. So if you have a tariff on raw materials or semi-manufactured goods or inputs coming from the UK to Malta, then that could hamper our exports to other markets which are using these inputs. So I think it's a big question mark, basically, but I'm hoping and optimistic that at the end of the day, even though it is rather late in the day, some sort of solution whereby trade continues to flow freely will be will be reached. I'm hopeful on that because it's the
Okay.
logical thing to do.
And Stephen, staying with you, I mean, is this, if companies register with you, if they do have interest in the UK, is this something that Trade Malta is keeping an eye on and can keep them updated on as information does become available?
Of course, I mean, one of our strengths as Trade Malta is the collection and dissemination of information. We have a good contact, almost personalized contact with all our clients. So for those companies who we know are interested or active in the UK, we would obviously be well placed to inform them of any developments or information which we have, which could be of relevance to them. So yes, I mean,
I would add to what Stephen has just said, because yes, the UK market is also a very important market from an export perspective. Just to give you some context, we also have some of the largest food and beverage manufacturers on the island who would typically be selling in the UK under a private label. So the product per se wouldn't be seen as made in Malta or produced in Malta, but would be part of a larger distribution chain. But I'm sure that many of these companies at this stage would have some contingency and scenario building just in case of what happens on 1st January. We're obviously hoping for the best, but it's still not clear. And this was last week. We had a webinar on doing business in the UK post Brexit, and it's still there are way too many question marks, and you could tell that even our guests, they were very. When being asked questions, very specific questions, the answers weren't forthcoming because it's still pretty much very fluid in certain areas.
Yeah,
I think Anton, Joe, if I can jump in, as someone who actually exports to the UK, we do business in the UK. What we found is that the Brexit effect has affected us before Brexit. For example, even before the actual Brexit, if you like, comes into effect, for the past 12 months, we've had the typical response for many of our clients in the UK has been, look, we don't know what's going to happen, so we're not going to order as much product as we did in the past because there's a question mark. So the Brexit effect on many companies has started before it actually took place.
I see.
So So again, uncertainty is the most worry.
But for companies that are interested in internationalization, with or without the UK market at this point, then obviously you are the place to come for information that they might need to start that journey. And to sort of wrap up our conversation today, gentlemen, very interesting to have had all of your insights. I'd love to come to each of you for your one tip, perhaps, to any businesses watching today. What would you tell them as the tip to take forward for their step into internationalization? And Anton, I will come to you first.
Well, actually, it's a very good question. I think, and we've touched upon this during our conversation, I think right now it's a very good time to sit down, do the desk research, try to use available online tools like LinkedIn to connect with people, to start a conversation going. From our experience, from where we stand, most of the companies that we support are still doing internationalization. They're still reaching out to their existing partners, suppliers, agents, whoever they are, talking to them on a more regular basis on the phone, video conference, rather than meeting them, but maintaining the relationship. I think that is crucial because I think even in a COVID-free world, the relationship is one of the most important ingredients in internationalization. I think it's also a good tip to, try and find new contacts in this context. I think that people are more willing to engage online at the moment, and I think no harm in trying to establish a new contact in a market where you think you might be in 2-3 years down the road, and start establishing that contact. So I think that's the take-home tip I would give to companies who are seriously considering exporting at this stage.
Thank you. Anton, Stephen?
Well, I would suggest to companies basically to think ahead, but not to overthink, because sometimes, especially for new or would-be exporters, my suggestion is prepare, think, do your research, take this time whereby things are a bit slower for many companies to develop a detailed export strategy based on desk research. People now, as Anton mentioned, are more receptive than they were before. I've had potential customers in various markets who would not talk to me 9 months ago, but now they have the time and they do respond to emails. So the markets are more receptive. Take this time also to reassess your current export strategy. Are some markets more profitable than others? Do some markets offer better long-term potential? Are there any opportunities in markets which I have not looked at? Mm-hmm. So again, it's a time for reassessment, but be prepared to hit the ground running, because things will normalize pretty fast once a vaccine comes online. By normalization, I mean it will take a number of months. But once things become to normalize, it's better that the company is prepared now, as opposed to trying to prepare when things are back to normal, because then you're too late. So take this opportunity to prepare so that you can hit the ground running in 5-6 months' time when things really start to return to normal.
Lovely. Stephen, thank you. Great advice there. And finally, Joe, what would be your tip?
Well, little to add to what Anton and Stephen mentioned. I think it's a particular time, and companies have the opportunity, if you like, to look a bit inside them and use this time, to reflect and to prepare for better times. One little tip would be, start small, but start. Many times, as Stephen was saying, it's probably counterproductive to over-prepare, but you need to prepare to a degree, but you need to start. And then you're open enough to receive feedback, adopt the feedback, and adapt and change accordingly. But start.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Really, really great insight there for our viewers. I really appreciate you being with me today on the Boardroom. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you so much for being with us on the Boardroom. The advice there that if you are thinking of internationalization, then this is a good time to start, a good time to hit the ground running. And of course, Trade Malta is the place to go for all of the advice that you could possibly need. So thank you for being with us as always. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Boardroom.